So we're looking at a 2012 Altima with a 2.5 liter four-cylinder. It's got just over 100,000 miles on it, and the issue that we're having is that, well, maybe your issue perhaps is that you came out and it wouldn't start, or it's stalled, or maybe it's doing what this one is doing, and mostly when it's in gear and it's idling low, it has a tendency to kind of miss. And it may or may not come across on video, but right now it's really missing, so we're gonna get out and see if we can fix this problem in this video. So the issue we'll be working on today is the issue of your crankshaft position sensor going bad. And this can cause the issues I talked about, where maybe the car doesn't start, it stalls, or it starts running rough. And this is because this is the piece that tells your computer where the engine is at in its cycle, and so that way it knows to fire all the cylinders and spark plugs and do everything that makes the engine run. This is a Denso part. This is a Denso 196-4003. I would recommend getting the Denso part. This is a good quality brand, and this is also what Nissan uses as their OEM supplier. So this should be pretty near the same thing as what came with the car. And you can get these somewhere like Rock Auto, or maybe you look this part number up and you can order it somewhere where you find a good deal. So that is what we've got there. And in case you wondered, this is what your crankshaft position sensor looks like. It's got a little plug that you can plug the harness into there, and this just bolts in the side of the engine. It's a little, essentially a magnet that communicates where the crankshaft is located to the computer. So I'll show you how to get that out and put the new one in. Okay, so you've got your car here. The first thing you're going to want to do is pull it somewhere flat, like your garage or your driveway, where you can either jack it up so you can get under the car, or in this case you see we've got ramps here, and that gives us enough room to crawl under the vehicle. So you're going to want to crawl under here and potentially put something down, like some boxes that you can lay on. And since we're getting under the vehicle, you probably want safety glasses, because your vehicle may not be as clean as this one. So once you've got the vehicle up in the air and you're ready to crawl under it, you're going to get under the vehicle, and I'll show you where the crankshaft sensor is located. So once you're under your vehicle, you're going to want to trace your exhaust back down the driver's side here, and you'll be looking at the side of what is your CVT, and right to your left on the passenger side you'll see your oil pan. Here's your oil drain plug right here. So what you want to do is trace back this exhaust, and you'll get back here and you'll see your front axle. This is your front axle. It comes out of your CVT, goes over to your other wheel. That's what drives your car, is a front wheel drive car. And you've got some space back here that you can do what I've done, and you can point a flashlight up in the area where you'll be working. So that gives us plenty of light here. And you want to look up in here and you can kind of see some wiring. And this is the back of your engine. And this plug we're looking at right up there, kind of above my finger in the video, well, that's your crankshaft position sensor. Now I'll try to get this to come through on video, okay, but there's not a lot of room to really get a phone up in there, which I'm videoing on, so I'll do my best here. But here you're looking at the connector for the crankshaft position sensor, and on the driver's side of the exhaust you've got a little bit of space here to maneuver your arm around. So I'll do my best to stick my phone up here and show you that that is the crank crankshaft position sensor. You can see it's really not a lot holding it in. There's an electrical connector that's of course needed to connect it back to the vehicle computer, and then you've also got one bolt holding it in that you'll need to remove. So let's get set back up and I'll show you how to take this off. So in trying to get this out, you might think you can just reach up here and you'll have to depress a little connector, and you might think that this will just pull right off. Unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to really get enough force on this connector to depress the retainer and remove it at the same time. So you're going to have to figure out a way to do that. And of course, there's not really any good way to get two hands up in here. And there's not a good way that you can maneuver a screwdriver into the side and push that at the same time while you're pulling this off. So let me show you what we're going to use to remove this. So if you don't have any, you'll want now to go get some long needle nose pliers like I've got here. These are from Harbor Freight, and these are long enough, but they're also maneuverable enough that we'll be able to set them up in there and basically be able to pull that connector straight back with these, and I'll show you what that looks like. So the setup with these pliers is going to be to kind of feed them up through this gap, and you can kind of see where I've got here, and you've got really a lot of room up and behind the engine here that you can feed these up and get them in position where you need. But I'll try to show you how I've got them set up. You can kind of see here, you're wanting to press on the back of this connector where the retaining tab is. I know this is kind of hard to demonstrate. I'm filming and showing at the same time. But you want to keep them back on the connector so you're depressing the retaining tab, but you're also pulling it off. So I'll try to show this now, but you've got these in position, and what you want to do is grip them best you can, and really this should come straight off and back. So once you get that off, you'll have just the connector hanging right here, kind of free, and you can move it out of the way. Now this is plastic, so don't go to town squeezing on it trying to get it off, right? You just want to squeeze the back of it enough that you're pushing on this retaining tab that my thumb's on, and don't be pulling it from the wires either. Those can come right off, and then you'll be in a world of hurt because you'll need to figure out a good way to repin this connector. And while you've got it off, you also have a good opportunity to inspect it, make sure it looks clean, there's no corrosion or anything that would prevent it from making good contact when it's connected to the crankshaft position sensor. Okay, so now that we've got the connector up and out of the way, you'll remember that right here we've got a 10mm bolt that we need to remove. Now if it's a little rusty, you may want to spray something like Blaster or WD-40 on there. Should make it easier to get it off, but in this case I'm going to take my 10mm socket and my ratchet. I'm just going to come up in here and I'm going to loosen this bolt, and we'll be able to get this out. Alright, so I'm going to take this bolt out. Now I've gotten it loose with my socket and my ratchet, and I've got it out, and here you can see, try to show that to you. This is what your bolt looks like. Set that off to the side so you don't lose it. And now you are ready to get this sensor out, and in my case I'm just going to get my hand up in here and kind of start wiggling it out gently. It's possible you may need to work with this a little bit. If you need some gloves, put some gloves on. I'm just going to gently work this out. Keep in mind this has an O-ring on it that helps hold it in place, but you should be able to spin it a little bit and start working it out so that you can remove it. And like this, I'm just starting to wiggle it some more, got my finger on the piece where the bolt goes through, and like that, it just came out. So now I've got the old crankshaft position sensor out here. You can see, of course, it's got some oil on it because this sits inside your engine, and there's not really much to these. It's a good idea to set them next to the new part. So this is the new one that I've just taken out of the box, and you want to make sure that you're at least looking like you're going to put the same thing back in. So the connectors, you know, those are the same. They look the same. They look like they have the same dimensions and everything. So physically, we should be putting the same thing back. On these, it's important to make sure that when you're looking at it, make sure this O-ring is present. That's very important because obviously these sit on the side of your engine, and without this O-ring, they're not going to sit right, and you're probably going to start leaking oil. So make sure that on your new one, the O-ring is present, and, you know, things happen. Make sure it's in good shape too. Make sure nothing happened when it got put in the box. So once we've looked everything over, we'll get back under the car and put the new one in. So a quick tip before we get back under the vehicle. This crankshaft position sensor, this O-ring, get some fresh motor oil. Just dip your finger in there real quick, get a little bit on your finger, and wipe that all around your O-ring. And what that will do is that will lubricate it, so one, it goes in easier, and two, that should help make sure that it seals up well. And by lubing it up before you put it in, it should go in, and you won't have to worry about deforming it while you're sliding it in place in the car. So just a quick tip, we'll do that and get back under the car. So we're back under the vehicle, and I'll just put a picture of this in the video instead of trying to feed my phone up in here and show this. But before you put the sensor back, you may want to come up in here in this area and just wipe it off with a paper towel, or kind of stick your phone up in there and make sure it looks pretty clean where the sensor mounts. You don't want that to be dirty, have any rust or anything. You want that sensor to be able to sit nice and flush with the engine. So you can do that first, and then we'll get the sensor put back in place. Okay, so you'll want to go ahead and kind of feel around up in here after you've got this cleaned up, and get your sensor positioned where it needs to go. And then you'll just want to push this back in and kind of work it back into place. You may have to wiggle it around some, and you'll be able to feel kind of when it's sealed back up, but just work it back into place and make sure that you're also lining up your bolt hole. You should be able to wiggle this around and get it in place and feel the O-ring seat into the engine real nice and smooth, and you'll get a nice seal, and then you can put your bolt in. Okay, so with the new sensor seated in place and you've double checked that it's nice and sitting nice and flush, you'll be able to take your old bolt and put it back into the side of the crankshaft position sensor. And a good sign that you were successful here is if you're able to put this in and start it by hand. And as you can see here, I may need to kind of wiggle it around so that my sensor is lined up good with the engine so I can put this bolt through. But as you can see, I'm starting this by hand, and you shouldn't need to really tighten it up with your ratchet until you've got it most of the way in. So keep that in mind when you're putting this bolt back in. So at this point I've got it hand tight, and I'm feeling around the sensor, and I can feel that it's nice and secure, and it feels like it's seated really well. So I'm going to get my ratchet, and I'm going to make sure I'm tightening Now I'm going to come back up here, and I'm just going to make sure I tighten this up. And at that point, you'll be good to go. Okay, so with my 3/8 ratchet and my 10mm socket, I'm pretty confident I've got this pretty tight now. It doesn't need to be incredibly tight, obviously, but you should have it pretty tight, and it should feel like it's fairly snug. You know, I used a 3/8 ratchet for this, so don't feel like you need to bust out the big guns. But once you've got that secured and you've double checked your work, you're ready to grab your connector that you set off to the side. Make sure you've oriented it the correct direction with the tab facing the passenger side of the vehicle, and you'll be able to snap that back in place. And at that point, it's time to test start your car and see how everything goes. Okay, so we've started the car, and if you remember, the symptoms that we were dealing with were mainly if the car was in gear, it would start to shudder and act like it was missing at a low idle. So we'll see if we can recreate that now. So I've put it in drive. I'm going to sit here, and at the moment it seems better. Now, if you're still having issues, or if you have a code, you may want to look at your camshaft position sensor, which is a lot easier, and I'll do another video on as well. So watch out for that.